Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Noelle, what are you doing?
Editing the script to take out all the objectifications of women.
Okay, great. So what did you keep?
Let's see. There's the opening scene with Dr. Gregory and the opening credits.
Yep, sounds about right. Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast. I'm story expert Lani Diane Rich of Chipperish Media.
And I'm film scholar and secret man-eating bug, Noelle LaCroix.
We're here today to talk about Teacher's Pet, the 4th episode of Season 1. Teacher's Pet was written by David Greenwalt and directed by Bruce Seth Green. This is the first of 8 episodes that will be directed by Bruce Seth Green in the first 2 seasons. After that, I presume he left because directing a show with Seth Green in it probably just became a bit too confusing. This is the first of 6 episodes David Greenwalt writes before going on to be a co-showrunner/creator of the Angel spin-off series, which seems appropriate as Greenwalt is the first writer to actually get Angel right, which he does in this episode.
I'm looking forward to your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
A warning before we begin, every episode of Still Pretty talks about each episode within the greater context of all of Buffy, and as such is fully spoiled. So if you haven't watched the whole thing, you may want to do that and then come back. All right, let's go on patrol. In Teacher's Pet, Dr. Gregory, the science teacher, goes missing, gets replaced by Miss French, who instantly gets Xander's attention because, well, Xander.
Could you help me?
Yes.
At the Bronze, Xander bumps into Blaine, a jerky jock who does female objectification battle with Xander and loses. Buffy talks with Angel, who gives her his leather jacket and warns her that something dangerous is out there.
He's coming.
The fort guy.
Don't let him corner you. Don't give him a moment's mercy. He'll rip your throat out.
When Dr. Gregory is found headless in the school refrigerator, Buffy's on the case, in search of suspect number 1, the big fork-handed vampire. Except when she finds him, he's coming up on Miss French, and when she turns to look at him, he runs away.
So I'm an undead monster that can shave with my hand. How many things am I afraid of?
Buffy witnesses Miss French's head doing a 180 and goes into research mode, deciding that she's a giant praying mantis, which has a certain hellmouthy logic to it.
Factoid 1. Only the praying mantis can rotate its head like that. Factoid 2. A pretty whacked out vampire scared to death of her. Factoid 3. Her fashion sense screamed predator.
It's the shoulder pads.
Exactly.
As Willow and Giles follow up the lead, they discover that Blaine's mother has reported him missing. Meanwhile, Miss French invites Xander to her home, gives him a martini that knocks him out, and locks him up in a cage in the basement where Xander finds Blaine alive and freaked the fuck out.
Wait.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Are you all right? You gotta get me out of here. You gotta. She gets you in. What?
What did she do?
Oh, God.
Buffy, Giles, and Willow discover that Miss French is a she-mantis, a shape-shifting bug monster that preys on virgins to fertilize her eggs.
Virgins? Well, Xander's not, I mean, he's probably
Gonna die.
Buffy finds the fork-handed vampire, uses him to track down Miss French's house, dusts him, then crashes the party in the basement just as Miss French in she-mantis form is about to get busy with Xander. Using bug spray, recorded bat sonar, and a machete, she ends Miss French, saves Xander and Blaine, and the newly rescued boys completely miss the point.
It's so unfair how she only went after virgins.
What?
I mean, here you guys are doing the right thing, the smart thing, when a lot of other boys your age...
Flag down on that play, babe. I am not.
Well, that's the she-mantis modus operandi. She only preys on the pure.
Well, isn't this a perfect ending to a wonderful day?
Xander destroys Miss French's eggs and life returns to normal. At the Bronze, Buffy bumps into Angel again, who continues to be mysterious.
Guess I should thank you for the tip.
Pleasure's mine.
Of course, it would make things easier if I knew how to get in touch with you.
I'll be around.
Or who you were.
All right. So this week in the male gaze.
Right.
I mean,
let's just hop right
let's
in.
just jump right in because we enter this episode zooming out of a girl's screaming mouth.
Sure.
And
sure.
Okay, sure. And we figure out pretty quickly that we're in Xander's dream, right? Obviously, this is Xander's POV. But oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah. Right. I mean, we open here with Xander, right? He's fantasizing about gaining Buffy's adoration. But in this, Buffy is still objectified. She is just a symbol for how cool he is. Her role here is to simply adore him. And that's it. That's his whole fantasy.
Yeah. And I think Sarah Michelle Gellar does a great job at the swoony Buffy in Xander's dream Buffy. I don't know. It's as gross as the whole thing is. I just love her being so cartoony and starry-eyed. That really works for me.
She's fantastic. And I have to say that Sarah Michelle Gellar can sell chemistry with everybody. Even the very terrible men that she's going to have later, the Parker Abrams, the Scott Hopes, even with them, there is something she is just able to sell that, that love and that adoration and that whole thing and the chemistry. She's one of those people that has chemistry with everybody who we're going to see that again with James Marsters, of course, as he comes in as Spike in season 2. But yeah, Sarah Michelle Gellar is a fantastic actress and she gets better as the series goes. she gets stronger with every single episode and it is amazing to see what she's capable of doing. She's really, really incredible. So we have as far as the male gaze goes, right? We have this very, immature male gaze, Blaine and his buddy at the bar, who is a person of color. It's a buddy of color. So at least we've got that. We've got a little bit of representation. Not much, not enough to give him a name, but it's something at least. But they're at the Bronze. They're being gross about the girls at school. There's the Xander, how many times have you scored? And I mean, women are literal achievements in this game. And then Xander goes and grabs Buffy and Willow as points to his side to prove his manliness,
Yeah.
And that possession. And of course, Willow completely into it. She immediately puts her arms around Xander and, and flirts up all over him, which is kind of cute and sweet on Willow's part. But it's also oh my God, he's just, Yeah,
Willow in this episode is just really interesting to me. You pointed out, I think it was last time, that Willow loves Xander.
Yes.
And because Willow loves Xander, and we love Willow, and Willow is objectively just great. Willow is awesome in so many ways. So if Willow loves Xander, Xander must not be that bad.
And she knows him. She knows who he really is. I mean, that moment later in the episode when they're oh, well, Xander can't be a virgin. He's probably, and then she's gonna die.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that is an indication that how well she knows him, that she knows she knows the core of Xander underneath all the grossness. And because we trust Willow, there's kind of this transitive power of affection, know? And so at this point in the series, like, I want Xander for Willow because Willow wants Xander, even though I don't want Xander for Willow because Willow's so much better than Xander.
Absolutely.
Like, leaving him in the dust. But Xander also is this very, it's this very quiet, accepted, he's a teenage boy. And so all of his grossness is kind of explained under this boys will be boys, kind of blanket excuse.
Yeah.
Right. It's this blank check for men to behave however they want because, boys will be boys and it's cute.
Yeah.
We're supposed to see it as cute and funny.
Yeah, it's this like tee-hee sexism. Xander is gross and this horn dog, teenage boyishness is played for laughs. But if I make a sexist joke, it's still sexist, even if I'm trying to be funny.
Right.
And maybe especially because I'm trying to be funny. Because when you make something funny, you normalize it. But so I feel like the show is going, well, you, the viewers, know we're doing sexism and we know we're doing sexism. So it's comedy. But what you're producing is still sexism.
Exactly. And the thing is that it's a sanctioned sexism, right?
Yes.
It's accepted. It is brought in as like, oh, isn't this cute? Isn't this funny? Isn't this harmless? And I think that the presumptions of ownership, and possessiveness, like the second Angel shows up, right? Xander's all angry and pissed off. Buffy goes off to talk to Angel, and Xander has this jealousy and possessiveness over Buffy. Like, he doesn't have that right. And on top of it, jealousy is not a sexy thing anyway. No. Jealousy speaks to possessiveness, like, so all of it is really not good for Xander. And the thing is, like, it's not that we can't have these things, because these things are very real in our society, and putting them into our fiction, in no way do our fictional characters need to be perfect. They shouldn't be. They should be flawed. The problem is that, and we're going to be talking about this all the way through. So everybody, get out your bingo cards now. Get out your shot glasses for the drinking game.
There you go.
Because the problem is when we treat it within the fiction that we are calling it cute, we're calling it funny, we're calling it harmless, which it is none of those things. Then we're kind of saying this is the way it is. And not only that, but this is the way it should be. Isn't it so cute and funny? And it's to a certain extent, yes, we're showing how immature Xander is. We're showing how kind of a jerk he is. And on some level, we are saying this is jerky. When Blaine and his buddy are, doing this objectification, shootout with Xander, right? It's supposed to be gross. Like, I think we're supposed to see Blaine and his friend as being just disgusting, but Xander's not far off from them, like, at all. And yet when Xander does it, it's cute.
I'm fascinated by that because I know how I feel about Xander, but I'm not sure. It's hard for me to watch the show and figure out how the show wants us to feel about Xander. We're deep in Xander's POV for most of this episode.
Yes.
And that suggests to me that we're supposed to be with him and we're supposed to be rooting for him, even in all of his grossness.
Yeah.
And I just find that so interesting and problematic from a character development perspective and from an audience relationship perspective.
Yeah. So when we have Xander and we kind of put this little stamp of, cute boys will be boys approval on everything that he does, we're supposed to love him. And the thing is that, and I have said this before and I'll say it again, I will admit to it. I love Xander. I can't help it. I do think he's funny. I do think he's cute. I love Nick Brendan's performance,
Yes.
But the thing is, it's light and shadow Xander, and shadow Xander is shadowy without the shadow being recognized, with the shadow being kind of pulled into, to the approval that we put on the light side of Xander.
Yeah.
Although I don't think we get any light Xander in this episode. He's kind of awful all the way through.
He's kind of awful all the way through. The best that we do is not, I don't think it's Xander, it's Willow and Buffy and their reactions to Xander. I feel like that's the closest that we have gotten on the show to I don't want to say punishing, but acknowledging the gross behavior.
Right.
Starting with when Miss French walks up and Xander goes completely pre-verbal.
Yeah. Right. And then Buffy and Willow they're so empathetic. They're watching him and they're laughing at him, but they're also with him. And I think that's another thing too, though, about Xander is that, you know, part of what it is in any character that helps us connect with them is vulnerability, right? And Xander is throughout, I think fair enough, all of Buffy from beginning to end of season 7. He is walking vulnerability. That everything about him, everything that is awful and gross is also wrapped up in this. He's just a mess. He's a mess. He's always a mess. His family is a mess. We don't get this until like later in the series, and it's usually addressed until we get to Hell's Bells in season 6 when we actually see his family at Anya and Xander's, you know, would-be wedding. You know, we get these hints that his family life is really terrible, that his parents are really terrible. I mean, not just, you know, like absent the way that like Willow's parents are completely absent, you know?
Right.
But they're actively abusive to each other and to him, you know? So you get this sense, and we don't really get it strongly probably until season 4. We get little hints about it, but not a real strong sense of it until season 4. But there's all this vulnerability around him with his need to be, you know, to be better than he is, his need to be more manly, his need to be, you know, he sees all these flaws within himself. And Xander, as much as we loathe Xander, I don't think anybody loathes Xander more than Xander.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
And that brings that vulnerability in, that makes him, you know, somebody that we can connect to emotionally, because that's the role of vulnerability in any character. And once you connect with them emotionally, like even when they've got these flaws, you know, you can kind of accept it. That's part of a flawed character. And the flawed characters are the best characters. We need characters with strengths, weaknesses, and vulnerabilities. It's just that Xander's, a lot of those real weaknesses of character are being portrayed, as I've said, as cute rather than seriously problematic. And we don't see consequence. One of the things I'm going to talk about forever, and again, get out your bingo cards, is how Joss Whedon works with consequence. That whenever anybody does anything bad, there is always a severe slapback. There's always consequence, except for Xander.
Yeah. And you know, we've talked already about Xander as a self-insertion fantasy for Joss Whedon, and it just gives me so much pause. It makes me so uncomfortable.
And knowing what we know now about Joss Whedon as a problematic figure, you know, and the things that he was doing, apparently, you know, allegedly on the set of these shows in which he was the boss, like, you know, it ain't great. You know, it appears to all be consensual. You know, it was his wife who outed him, none of the women that he was apparently, you know, allegedly involved with during that time. But when you're the boss, like, you know, there's a certain level of consent that can't, when you're in a situation where there's such a huge power differential, there's a certain level of consent that can't truly be completely given because of that power differential. And he was messing around with women on the set, apparently, allegedly, you know, actresses, and I think I've heard some tell of some of the writer staff, that it's a real problem, and it speaks to this sense of, you know, of entitlement, of male entitlement, which we see so much in Xander. So I see all of that, and it does make me uncomfortable. I think that the you know, revelations we've had about Joss Whedon have sort of opened that up. And again, like, you know, I've said it before, and I'll say it again here. When your beloved creators are problematic, the idea of boycotting the work is really not necessarily the best way to do it. Mostly, you know, because with most creators, they take a cut, but there's, you know, there can be dozens to hundreds of people, like dozens working on a book, in like the case of Orson Scott Card, right? and the people who work on it, the publisher, the editor, all of those people, also worked on that book and also get the benefit from the sales of that book. But with a show like this, it's Joss Whedon and like literally hundreds of people, most of whom are getting something on the residuals on the back end. And so if you completely boycott and never give another dime to any Joss Whedon property, then it's not Joss Whedon who suffers from that. It's everybody who worked on it, some of whom were his victims, if you want to call them that. I don't think they have defined themselves publicly, have come out as victims. And people get to choose their own, identity and how they feel about their relationships. So I leave that up to the women with whom he's had these relationships. That's their call to define themselves that way or not. But it is troublesome. And as we go back to Xander, as we go back to this self-insertion fantasy, with that extra textual context, which is, always something you have to be wary of, is bringing that extra textual stuff in. Because when we're talking about Buffy, we're talking about the text itself. And I really want to stay in that place. But, taking a little bit of time to sort of look at this in that broader context, I think has a space in this discussion.
I think so too. Especially when you're talking about something like power differential, which is what we see. I mean, that is the struggle in this episode. But it's also, I think, by and large, what we're looking at when we're looking at just the idea of a big bad, something that is more powerful. And, and what that means for the protagonist and what that means for the story moving forward. What do you do when you have this big power differential?
Right. With a teacher and a student, which is what we're dealing right now with Xander being on the powerless end of that power differential. And we treat it as gross. The way that Miss French is preying on these boys, with or without, raping them and forcing them to fertilize their eggs and then cutting off their heads, right? I mean, with or without that element, it's still predatory. It's still gross. And we acknowledge that. Within the story. Yeah.
And I think that she is appropriately inappropriate, if that makes sense. I think that we see the boundaries crossing before we get into any sort of real seduction. I hesitate to even call it that because, oh my God, is that scene at her apartment so uncomfortable?
Yes,
and
it is horribly
holding my breath the whole time. And it's what I love is that for me, it's less uncomfortable once she's a giant bug.
Yeah, absolutely. Once she's legitimately textually a monster. But I think that even without that, we still see her as gross. She's still coded as gross and inappropriate and not okay, because of that power differential. And I find that interesting, considering some of the things that are alleged to have happened behind the scenes on this show. And it does feel like kind of a working through of that idea of that power differential, the idea that there's no circumstance in which a student and a teacher can be together without there being a grossness factor, without there being something highly, highly inappropriate about that. And especially like how before that, we have that scene with Dr. Gregory where he's talking to Buffy. And the thing that I love about that, we have all this male gaze, right? We open up with male gaze. It's all about male gaze. When the teacher is talking to Buffy, he's cleaning his glasses.
Yeah.
He can't see her, but he knows her and he's complimenting her on her intelligence, on her capability, on being her, her advocate with let's make them eat that permanent record, So we have this really nice moment with this teacher who is completely appropriate, who is playing exactly where he should be. And in the one thing that we see Buffy celebrated for with Xander, which is really just her beauty, this guy isn't acknowledging that at all. He's taking his glasses off. can't even see her, right?
Yep.
You know, he is talking to her as a person, as a human, as somebody who's capable and strong and smart.
Yes.
You know, which are the things that Buffy is not celebrated for. Buffy, when she is celebrated for her supernatural abilities, things that like came to her, but that she didn't go out and get, that are kind of essential to who she is, but it sort of landed on her like a piano, right? In a cartoon, you know? But this, like her capability, her intelligence in this mundane space, you know, of school, I like that we celebrate that in her and her intelligence. And I love the way that this guy talks to her.
He's fantastic. I love Dr. Gregory so much. And I love the little circular sort of symbolism of, you know, she is the one who finds his glasses on the floor.
Yes.
She places them on the desk. And then at the very end, she puts them in the jacket pocket. Because it's the first time that we see loss really confronted as a loss.
Yes.
They are upset in the library after finding Dr. Gregory's body. And I found that really interesting too. Because that doesn't last. I mean, in the pilot, you know, we have an extreme dead guy in a locker, and then it's not that school is not canceled. Like there's just we don't really care. Like, I mean, the thing is, let's face it, you know, Buffy as a show is knee deep in dead bodies. Yes.
Like, you know, I mean, we're always like the dead bodies. Eventually you have to become somewhat desensitized to it. Every now and again, there's someone we care about who dies, you know, and we managed to be able to care about Dr. Gregory in like 30 seconds, you know, and we made him into somebody that we like, and that's a good guy. And, you know, and then he, of course, gets killed. And we have this, I mean, Buffy's crying. Like, we don't see Buffy cry over anything other than main characters after a while, you know? But we see kind of like the importance of getting back at, you know, finding out who did this and how it was done and what the monster was and all that kind of stuff, you know, that beheaded this beloved teacher. And the last time we felt the loss of Jesse mostly through Xander.
Yes.
Xander felt the loss of Jesse, you know, but mostly we've just got dead bodies all over the place, and it's sort of how it goes. We put our main cast in danger, but they don't, you know, die, at least not immediately, not in the early seasons. And so it's interesting how we have to somehow become comfortable with so much death all the time.
Yeah.
You know, but here we have, you know, Buffy's crying, Giles is shaken up, you know.
Yeah, Giles being shaken by the loss of Dr. Gregory, I thought was really there was something very sweet about that, because I feel like Dr. Gregory was a little bit of Giles light, you know, somebody who sees Buffy, who is supportive of her and believes in her. And then when
cleans his glasses.
Yeah. It's the glasses.
Yeah.
When Buffy identifies that Dr. Gregory was killed shortly after they saw him for the last time, because he didn't change his clothes, Giles is impressed. Giles acknowledges, you know, here's this thing that was played as a joke in the pilot when Buffy identifies a vampire by his jacket. But clothing and fashion really is part of her superpower.
Yeah.
She spots the timing on this murder because she's noticing clothing. And I don't think Giles says anything to her, but he does acknowledge with a kind of, oh, impressive. And then he doesn't question it. He believes her.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us kind of to this thing that you brought up in the notes, which I thought was really interesting. This idea of adult women in the Buffyverse versus adult men.
Oh my God.
And I thought that was a really interesting observation. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
So we have a really problematic relationship with adult women. And by the way, just take a sip of whatever beverage you've got every time I say problematic, because I'm going to say that throughout the run of
Put that on your bingo card.
Be careful about what you're drinking. I suggest water, stay hydrated. I care about you. Okay. On the show so far, I know we're just 4 episodes in, right? But adult women are kind of the worst.
No, they really are.
Last week, it was Amy's mother who is abusive any way you want to look at it. This week, it's Miss French, who is just predatory, straight up predatory. And then we have Joyce, who is not problematic necessarily, but she's just in Buffy's way.
Oh, trust me, she will be. She's going to be super problematic at points throughout.
See? Yeah.
But yeah, like Joyce is not terribly well represented. And then you asked me a question, are there ever any positive depictions of adult women on the show? And then I had to go through and think about it, and I hadn't really thought about it. But as I go through, we've got Joyce, who eventually, but after a number of seasons, becomes an actual character and is okay. But there's a lot of bad stuff coming from Joyce in the early seasons, and it's a problem. And towards the end of season 1, and then in season 2, we're going to have Jenny Calendar, who is the computer techno-pagan teacher who has the relationship with Giles, and she's pretty good, but of course she dies, and she does become a problem at a certain point where she sort of betrays everybody in the group. In season 3, we open season 3 with, this is a secondary character, but an adult woman, Pat, who is Joyce's friend from Dead Man's Party, and she's pretty much an asshole. We have Willow's mom, who is negligent at best and actively destructive at worst. We have Xander's mom and Xander's family we've talked about. They're not great. In season 3, again, we have all the mothers from Moo, mothers opposing the occult, something like that. I can't remember why they called it Moo. From season 3's gingerbread episode. They are also terrible. Season 4, we have Maggie Walsh, who is dreadful. We do have Giles's girlfriend, Olivia, who seems okay, but she's not around that much. So she's just kind of like this really background character. Season 5, we have Glory, who is obviously very, very bad. Right. She is our big bad for that season. And season 6, like season 5 and 6, we turn into this kind of switch on things where by season 6, technically our main characters are now adult women, Buffy, Anya, Willow, Tara, all adult women, and all pretty good. And they, exude positive adult womanhood. And we also have Dawn around at that time, who is the child who is really annoying, in this first couple of seasons there. She gets good in season 7, but it's a rough road for Dawn. And then, so we have good women, but even then, Buffy and Willow in season 6 are both really messed up. And Willow's a big problem in season 6, all the way to the end of season 6, where she actually becomes our big bad, bringing on the apocalypse by the end, And then by season 7, again, we have Faith and Buffy and Willow, who are our adult women in this context. And they are, they're pretty good, and that's fine. But we don't have a lot of adult women, and I may have missed some in that run. That was purely off the top of my head. So if anybody out there has anything to add to that conversation, I'd really love to hear it. But honestly, I'm thinking about it, and I think you're right. We do not have many positive depictions of adult women in this show. And what does that say? Yeah,
that is fascinating to me. Doesn't Riley show up with a wife at some point? Is that a thing that happens?
He does in season 6. I usually try to forget that episode. Okay. It's bad. Okay. It's bad. It's one of the worst episodes, and she is truly, truly terrible in this very cardboard perfection kind of way. So yeah, she's another adult woman, but also seen as the enemy in that episode. And so that's we'll talk about that in detail when we get there. But I'm going to be looking for any positive adult women throughout because I don't think that we really get them. No. We don't get many women in general. You think about most of the big bads are men. We have Drusilla, who is kind of a secondary bad guy for season 2. We have Harmony later on, who's a vampire, who's wonderful.
Love Harmony.
Love her, but
Harmony
obviously
is wonderful, but
bad.
Not, yeah.
Wonderful as a character,
Yes.
very fun, but as a depiction of womanhood, probably not our best foot forward. Strong adult female womanhood is not really represented.
I wonder, what does that mean? I wonder if it has something to do with the short lifespan of the Slayer. Buffy doesn't have Buffy is grappling with this role of the Slayer, of being the Slayer, wanting to be a normal girl, knowing that she can't really be a normal girl.
Right.
And she doesn't have anybody to look up to. I mean, there are no elderly Slayers.
Right, exactly.
There's
What she has are the Watchers, which is primarily, as we're going to discover throughout the run of the season or the series, a primarily patriarchal, establishment.
So she doesn't have anywhere to look for that kind of guidance. She is out there pioneering all the time, having to make her own way, to figure out her own sort of integrated adult womanhood. I don't know. That's just off the top of my head, but I'm going to be watching for it because...
Yeah, I'm going to be looking for it too, because I mean, honestly, and I didn't do an exhaustive search. I just, went through like my understanding of the series. But if there are positive depictions of adult womanhood, I don't know. I don't think there are a lot in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah. But meanwhile, in this episode, we have some great adult men.
Sure, we absolutely do. I mean, we've got Dr. Gregory, who we've already talked about. He's fantastic, right? We've got Giles. He's happy to play a support role, but he also has this patriarchal moment where he demands that Buffy obey his orders. And she says, yes, 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 and then completely ignores it. And then when she comes back and he confronts her on it, she says, I lied, get over it.
Yes, I lied. I'm a bad person. Let's move on.
Right, exactly. And he's gonna very quickly get over the idea of bossing her around. He's going to step into this role of, I don't think you should do this, and here's why, but she makes the decisions.
Yes.
She is absolutely in charge. And I like that. And he's good with that. Like, he doesn't get all worked up about it. He's like, all right, you lied to me. I don't like that, but okay.
Yeah.
And also we have Angel. Now, Angel is not in here much. He is a very mysterious figure. I think he's in like 2 scenes. But, we're going to discover that he has been, of course, a grown-ass man/vampire for centuries. So he's got much, much more experience with this than either Giles or Dr. Gregory. But he's also like a non-toxic male. He's actually, I like him in this.
In this episode in particular?
Yeah. Now, how did you feel about Angel in this episode? Because you, of course, don't know the whole of the Buffyverse the way that I do. So I'm really interested in your take on Angel based on just what you've kind of seen so far.
Based just on what I've seen so far, and this episode in particular, he really doesn't make a strong impression on me.
Yeah.
He seems the character still seems very wooden to me.
Yeah.
I feel like... See, I know that this is not an issue with the actor. I know that David Boreanaz is capable of doing whatever you give him to do.
Yeah.
But his scene, particularly at the end, reads to me like bad acting because he's so... there's just not a lot of there.
No, it is very quiet. He's doing this mysterious thing. We've got this mystery man because at this point we don't know yet that he's a vampire. So we're keeping everything under the under this shroud of mystery, right? And I think that does mean that he can't do much.
Right.
And he's not given much at this point. I mean, basically, he is in this episode purely to be like, hey, let's remember there's a hot guy.
Yes. Yes. And here, let me take my jacket off and show you my injury.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, here's the thing. Like I talked about last time about this idea of the Letterman's jacket, the ring, the bracelet that Xander gives Buffy, this attempt by men to mark and to cover the women with symbols of themselves, right?
Yes.
With symbols of their possession. And, an Angel got a pass on the cross because it wasn't about marking her. It was about protecting her. And this is about giving her something that she needs. He gives her his jacket, and it's not about possession. Like, I don't see that as about possession. It is really about, she looks cold. He just wants to make sure that she has what she needs, that she is comfortable, and I actually liked that. Did you like the jacket thing, or did you read that as kind of cheesy?
It felt very much like we need a reason for her to see that his arm is cut up.
Yes.
It really didn't feel natural to me. And I mean, and maybe, who knows, maybe I was with Xander a little bit on the, it's a balmy night. Nobody needs to be out there swapping clothing.
Right.
And I don't know, obviously we've got two actors who are very different sizes. So to me, she just looks ridiculous in his jacket.
I think they actually gave her a smaller jacket that was just a little too big for her, because he is like easily twice her size.
Yeah.
I mean, she is a tiny, tiny little thing. And so, if that had been his actual jacket that he put on her, I don't think it was, because it looked like it was big on her, but she wasn't swimming the way that she would be.
It wasn't a
in
tent.
something that he had been wearing. Yeah. So I think that there was a little bit of costuming magic going on behind the scenes there. Buffy's version of Angel's jacket, and then Angel's version of Angel's jacket. But I liked it. I mean, I don't know. Like it sold for me. I got it. And I like Angel. I mean, I really do like Angel.
Yeah, and I do agree with you that it didn't read to me as a possession.
No.
It wasn't, he wasn't marking her as property. It was truly meant as, here, have this jacket. Here, it's cold.
I don't think possession of Buffy is something that even occurs to Angel at this point. Like, that's not even on his radar. And there is an age difference there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
There's quite an age difference, as we're going to discover, because he's like 240 at this point.
Yeah, that's
and she's 16. So
that's a big gap.
It's a big gap, and it is one of those things that we're going to have to like kind of wade through how that works, because one of the big things, of course, as we're talking about power differentials, a significant age difference, especially when the youngest person, in that pairing is so young. 16, young. So I think that as we move into that romance, there are going to be things that kind of tighten up that vast power differential there, just with pure experience in the world. And so I think we somehow managed to get away with it. I'm very much looking forward to having that discussion with you, because I kind of give it a pass because I love Buffy and Angel. But I'm not sure if I should give it a pass. I'm not sure that it's not
about to get
really
all problematic up in here.
It's about to get all problematic up in here. So I think that's interesting. Well, speaking of problematic, let's go ahead and use that segue.
Oh my God.
To move into something that you picked up in this episode, all of the phallic symbols.
Oh my God. So, you can't tell a story about, male gaze and male power and male sexuality without throwing a whole lot of phallic symbols into the mix. And it's right there, right from the get-go, with Dream Xander throwing a chair leg through the vampire's heart. Yes. And I love the camera following the impromptu stake as it zooms through the air.
Right. But we have some kind of problem with the budget on this, because we didn't dust a single vampire. We stabbed him in the heart, but we didn't do the effects.
Yep.
There was no dusting effect. I guess the praying mantis costuming was about all they could afford for this episode.
Yeah, and the 180 head turn.
And the 180 head turn, which was also a terrible effect.
Oh, 90s. Oh, 90s CGI. I love you so much.
Awful. Yeah.
But the in Xander's dream sequence, I mean, that guitar solo is definitely
Okay.
played and shot in a kind of a pornographic way.
Is that a masturbatory thing? Is that like when he's, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, okay, I'm just saying, like, even I saw that.
Yeah. And then, of course, it comes back when Miss French invites Xander to her house, and we cut away we jump cut to Xander's power cord with his guitar straight in the air.
Oh my God. So that is very blatantly a masturbatory visual.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my absolute favorite moment of phallic symbolism.
Yes.
When Miss French proposes that they build model egg sex. I love that with her accent. Egg sack sounds like egg sex. It's fabulous. But when she says, "Who would like to help me do that after school?" and all the boys' hands go up, she says, "Good." And we cut to the cafeteria. Plop. Hot dog surprise.
Hot dog surprise.
Hot dog
all
surprise.
Right. As many times as I've seen this episode, I never made that connection, and now I will never be able to unsee it. And all my response in the notes is "ew."
You're welcome. I mean, I feel like you hit all the major points with that. I mean, ew, ew.
It is, but oh God, of course, hot dog surprise. That has to be deliberate. All of this has to be deliberate, and yet, my innocent little eyes never saw it.
Well, you're so pure.
I'm so innocent. I almost never see the phallic. No, actually, I do see a lot of them, but I miss that. And you're right. It was absolutely so blatant right there. So that was pretty gross.
Yep. And then, of course, we have to kill the monster with a machete.
Yes.
And then Xander, after the who's who of Sunnydale high school virgins,
right. Xander
grabs the machete and hacks up the egg sacs in this. Just, I will reclaim the power that has been stolen from me by these women who have kidnapped me and now outed me as a virgin, because that's the worst possible thing that a person could be.
That's a terrible thing. Yeah. Blaine's whole thing about, you'll be facing a lawsuit.
Yeah.
That is just gross. Who cares?
I don't.
Being a virgin or not. And it is this thing with boys. Girls are supposed to remain virgins, but boys are supposed to sleep with everybody. And, and for the heterosexual boys, which is, of course, everything in Buffy is highly heteronormative. So we never even have a question about anybody being gay unless we're going to throw a little gay panic on it, usually, until we get to season 4. And then we do a little something more interesting with it, at least for Willow. But, we have this thing where, they're supposed to be doing all of this conquest, and the girls are supposed to be, chaste and pure and virgins themselves. And there's never a question, Buffy and Willow never look at each other and be like, well, I'm not a virgin. Nobody ever says anything, right? Because they're supposed to be, right? Because that's what the good girls are. But then in order for the boys in a heteronormative, space to be doing all of this conquesting, some of these girls have to be giving it up. And then those are the slutty girls. And as we deal with Cordelia moving forward throughout the next couple of seasons, we'll see that Cordelia kind of gets put into that role as well, although she is much more in charge of her sexuality, which is okay, which is a little bit better. But that in itself is this problematic, thing. This boys are supposed to get it and girls are supposed to not give it up. And so for boys, not being a virgin is this ultimate tribute to their manliness. And it really is just a tribute to their predatoriness, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what all this, it's possession, it's predation, which is wrong when Miss French does it to them. Well, and also because she's going to, rape them and then eat their heads. So, I mean, yes, obviously that's all wrong too. But I mean, even, and the power differential is a problem. But when the woman is predatory, that's a bad thing. But men being predatory, especially young boys, that's okay. Boys will be boys.
Right.
And really, for Miss French, I think bugs will be bugs. I think she gets a pass.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and I love the sort of reverent tone with which she talks about bugs. And of course, this is supposed to clue us into the fact that maybe not as
she is.
Yeah. Maybe something's going on with her. With her cricket sandwiches. But when she talks about bugs and about, the female being aggressive, it's with this kind of awe and wonder and isn't this magnificent? So I think that, I think well, here we go again with problematic. I mean, so it is what it is, folks.
Yeah.
The woman who is, yes, she's a monster. I'm not going to defend Miss French.
She's a monster and all of that is bad.
Yes, she's a monster.
We're not saying
all of that is bad.
Yes.
I am not.
And even if she wasn't a monster, a woman her age and her position as a teacher preying on young boys, that's not okay.
Not okay.
Right.
And the female being aggressive, the woman going after what she wants, the woman who has sexual desire and expresses it must be the villain.
Must be a bad guy.
She must be the bad guy. We would not make a female villain who was pure and chaste.
Yeah.
Again, not defending her. She's a monster.
She is a monster and she is legitimately a monster. And, but I think that when you look at the kind of the subtext of it, like a woman who is sexual and in charge of her sexuality is associated with badness, with monstrosity, And I mean, there are a lot of reasons why everything she's doing is bad. But again, we're not saying bugs will be bugs, right? We're not defending her with that. When I did that earlier, I was being ironic, but boys will be boys, right? So boys get the pass. Nobody else gets the pass. So that I find
female ugliness has to be punished always.
Yes.
We've got another example. We opened with in the pilot with female ugliness with Darla doing her vamp face.
Yes.
And here we are again with a woman who is aggressive and a literal monster.
Yeah. And any unattractive women that we have in Buffy are all looked down on. It is like, if they are not attractive, they instantly we're going to have lunch ladies later on. We're going to have a nurse in an episode in season 2, one of the worst episodes in all of Buffy. So I'm looking forward to talking about that with you. But any women who are unattractive, who are post-sexual, look at Joyce. Joyce is an adult woman, stunningly beautiful. Right. And so it really does kind of reinforce this idea that beauty is a woman's most important trait. And of course, that's something that comes from not Buffy, specifically, but from Hollywood, in general, all the time.
Yep.
So that's a thing that is inherited, from a broader societal context.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to throw that at Joss Whedon's feet. That is something we see quite a bit. I found it a little problematic, shifting topics here, that we have this, problematic from a purely narrative structural point of view, which is, of course, my particular form of nerdery.
Yes.
In that we have two monsters, right? We have the guy with the fork-hand, right?
Yeah.
Who has no relation to anything, whose only role is to slice Angel's arm and give us concern for him and his well-being. This guy is extremely dangerous. He's so, tough. And, he and Buffy, have a little bit of conflict in the park, and then he sees Miss French and he's afraid of Miss French, right? So his role is to, through that transitive power of horror, right? When the horrible thing is afraid of something, that horrible thing must be even more horrible, right?
Exactly.
So that's his entire role. And then we use him as like a drug sniff dog to find Miss French, to find her house. And then, of course, Buffy immediately stakes him with the ultimate symbol of mundanity, the white picket fence.
Yes.
So that was kind of interesting, if not it's fully like kind of thought through. And the only thing that the other purpose that he serves is to connect us back to the master, right? Because Giles tells this story about a vampire who displeased the master, and the master cut off his hand, and then the guy replaced it with a big claw, the big metal claw, becoming, the Freddy Krueger of vampires, right? So we have that whole thing, but structurally, narratively, as a villain, he doesn't really serve a purpose. And I feel like he as a monster in this, he gives us this, this idea of, it can't be Miss French, because obviously the monster is this fork-handed guy. So they give us this very, very moderate surprise twist, because we know something's wrong with Miss French from the moment she steps onto the scene. Something wrong with that girl, So I don't know. Like I really felt like the Freddy Krueger vampire kind of pulled away from what the rest of the episode is doing with Miss French, and that we didn't need it, aside from, being something that connects us back to the master, so that we don't forget what's going on in the big overarching story here. How did you feel about that guy?
I felt exactly the same way. He's more of a prop than anything else.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that we've got a central narrative conflict that is not a vampire for the second week in a row. So I feel like they sort of, okay, let's throw some vampires in there, because this is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And last week we didn't have vampires at all.
Right.
We didn't have the bronze. We didn't have Angel.
Right.
Like, let's bring this all back into the vampire slaying space. Although I was interested to hear Giles call it hunting and not patrolling.
Right. I don't think that they developed their terminology that much at this point. At this point, he does call it hunting. And hunting is an aggressive act, and patrolling is a protective act.
Exactly.
Right? Even in the words themselves.
That really made me sit up and take notice. I went, what?
Yeah. No, it's interesting, because it does become patrolling. Not too far in the future. I think very soon it becomes patrolling. But right now in these early stages, the word he used is hunting.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, because Buffy, in general, the philosophy of Buffy is that she is about protection.
Yeah.
Right. We will see later on in the series that if somebody becomes no longer a danger, if somebody who has killed and done terrible things ceases to be a threat for some reason, they're defanged for whatever reason, be that, metaphorically or literally in some cases. So if they can't do any more harm, Buffy lets them go.
Right.
She doesn't kill them. It's never about vengeance. It's never about, punishment for things done. It is purely a prophylactic act. It's about preventing more bad things from happening. And that's where Buffy puts her energy and her attention. It is protection. It's not actively going out hunting down these things before they can do anything wrong. They do something wrong. If they're still doing it, if they're trying to kill people, then they get killed, they get dusted. But if they, for some reason, can't hurt people anymore, then they're fine. They get a pass and they walk.
Yeah. Yeah. But our claw-handed vampire guy is really just there to be a prop.
Yeah.
He's there to be a vampire prop, specifically.
He's there as a vampire prop. He keeps us connected to the master. But he pulls away from the central narrative conflict of this particular, episode. And so I feel like it's not particularly well structured. It feels kind of slapdash, as far as the story structure in this episode goes.
Yeah.
So it's not my favorite episode in a lot of ways. A lot of ways, I don't think it's a very strong episode of Buffy, but it's first season, and the first season does tend to be kind of a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
All right. So do we have a moment of girl power? What's your moment of girl power in this episode?
I really got nothing. Does hot dog surprise count? I don't know.
As girl power? I don't think so. I don't think so.
I guess my the closest thing that I got to anything that was even sort of a revolutionary feminist moment of the week was Buffy and Willow refusing to help bail Xander out of his bumbling idiocy. When he's talking to Miss French, he looks to them for help and they just shrug.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I think that like here we have, a female antagonist, which is something that we haven't had as of yet and will not have a lot, honestly. It's usually men, usually men in that position of power. So we have a female antagonist who is using her sexual power, to predate on these boys, so I mean, there's something there in female power. And then of course Buffy is the person who is able to fight back against this woman. Nobody else can, Giles is support for that. Willow's a support for that. Buffy is the one with the power. So Buffy, I think basically every episode is going to have a certain amount of girl power from like the Buffy perspective. But the fact that the bad guy is actually a woman, the antagonist is actually a woman, I think speaks a little bit to that sense of, hey, women can be bad guys too. Women can be anything, that kind of thing.
Well, and our antagonist is a monster female specifically, and not, I mean, in which we get a female antagonist who is, for all intents and purposes, human.
Yes.
But this is a monster female, and that's interesting and noteworthy. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there's not a lot unless it's the relationship between Buffy and Willow.
Yeah. No, the relationship between Buffy and Willow, I think, is really great. And they are, both of them, really strong in this episode. And Willow, of course, is kicking ass. She's on the computer. She's getting information. She is right in it. She's the one who figures out that, of course, she knows Xander's a virgin, And
Willow hacking into the city's computer.
Yes. Getting the pictures of the autopsy, which they spared us again. So thank you for that. Yes.
But, and then Giles questioning whether or not what she's doing is legal.
Oh, no, I love that moment, right? Wasn't here, didn't see it, couldn't have stopped you.
Yep. Well, and there's really a little bit, there's a little bit of a nod to feminism. I mean, in that Giles is acknowledging their capability there.
Yeah. Right.
He is, what they're doing is maybe questionable, but he's not going to interfere because
right.
They're doing their thing.
All right. So Noelle, what's your favorite part of Teacher's Pet?
My favorite part of Teacher's Pet is Allison Hannigan's right eyebrow. I want to.
What is her right eyebrow doing?
There is the moment when Xander spots Miss French for the first time, goes completely pre-verbal. Willow and Buffy both look over, and that Willow's eyebrow does this wonderful scrutinizing. What in the name? Like
she is so expressive. Allison Hannigan is amazing.
Allison Hannigan's face is worth everything for the show for me. Right. She's so expressive and so wonderful. But that eyebrow raise, she is both sizing up this woman and also completely baffled as to why Xander is having trouble.
Yeah.
But
right.
then,
well, I think she knows why he's having trouble. I think that I think she's a bit skeptical of Xander in general at that moment.
It's a wonderful acting choice. And I love that eyebrow raise so much.
She's brilliant. She really is. I love her. She's fantastic.
I love everything she does. Yeah. And she is probably the only thing that could make me love Xander even a little bit.
Exactly. I know. The transitive power of Willow. That'll get you to love Xander.
Willow is magic, y'all. All right, Lani, what was your favorite part of Teacher's Pet?
I have to say my favorite part was Angel. I like Angel. I know.
I like you liking Angel.
I do. Like, I mean, and the thing is, like, now, of course, I'm doing Still Dead, which is the podcast about the Angel spinoff series. And it's so much fun. And the thing is, like, I'm, generally, everybody knows, a Spike girl. I like the Spike relationship with Buffy. I think that that's better and stronger for a lot of different reasons. But David Boreanaz, I love him. Angel and Buffy as star-crossed lovers. He's a vampire. She's a vampire slayer. Like, that kills me every time. And some of the most powerful moments in all of Buffy happened during that relationship in season 2. So, like, I love Angel. I like the way that he's not possessive with her. I like the way that he's kind of the anti-Xander. Like, he doesn't play this bullshit. And this is a guy who has lived through, like, the height of patriarchy. Like, he sees past it. He doesn't treat her that way. And even in just a couple of scenes here, I like the way he is with her. I mean, and it's our first sense of Angel as Angel, Angel being the character he will become. The person that he was in the first 2 episodes don't count. We're getting a do-over.
We get a do-over on Angel
right now.
It's fine.
And I like seeing him. I really do. And I like him a great deal.
Yeah.
So Angel's my favorite part of an episode that doesn't have a lot of good stuff going for it.
Yeah, no kidding. That's it for today. To join in the discussion on Twitter, follow Lani at Lani Diane Rich and me at Noelle LaCroix, and use the hashtag StillPretty. You can also visit the Chipperish forums. Go to chipperish.com, click on forum, and join in the fun there.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can keep Chipperish Media going to the tune of $1 a month or more and gain access to the live chat in Discord, where you can hang out with me and Noelle and all the Chipperish patrons, who are some of the smartest people around. So visit patreon.com/Chipperish to find out more.
You can also show your support for Still Pretty by going to Apple Podcasts and giving us a review. That's one of the most effective ways to show support for any of your favorite podcasts.
Yes.
Or you can use your social media platform of choice to tell your friends. Word of mouth is a powerful thing.
Yes, it is. And we will be back next time with Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, the 5th episode of season 1. Until then, wasn't here, didn't see it, couldn't have stopped you.